Let me ask you something. How many times this week have you clicked Accept All on a cookie banner without actually reading what you agreed to? Or how many apps on your phone have access to your location when you use them? And when was the last time you actually read a Terms of Service agreement before simply hitting that I accept? If you're like most people, the answers are probably too many to count, or you literally have no idea. And the thing is, we all know this. We all know that we're being tracked and our data is being collected and sold. But we do it anyways because it's convenient. And that convenience, that little trade that we make every single day, is exactly what a French philosopher warned us about nearly 200 years ago. His name was Alexis de Tocqueville, and in 1840, he predicted a form of tyranny that wouldn't really look like tyranny. There's no jackboots or secret police breaking down your doors, and no dramatic government crackdowns. Instead, he imagined something far more insidious, a world where we would willingly and happily trade our freedom for comfort and security. A world where we would essentially be reduced to what he called a flock of timid and industrious animals, of which the government is the shepherd. And he called it soft despotism. And if you think he was being paranoid, let me tell you about a woman named Lulu. Lulu lives in Beijing with her husband Sebastian, who is a French journalist. He decided in order to open her eyes, he would follow her around for the entire day and make a documentary about what freedoms she has traded off.
I've been a journalist in China since 2007. We live an ordinary life as a married couple, except for one detail. We're never really alone. China has at least one surveillance camera for every 2 inhabitants. Today, Lulu wants to show me the city council's latest idea. Is that what you wanted to show me? That screen?
If you cross when the light's red, either in a car or walking, you get displayed on the screen.
And what's the point of that?
To show everyone you broke the rules.
Doesn't it bother you at all that you can be kept under surveillance via your phone? Everything is monitored.
I haven't done anything wrong. So if someone's interested, they can do whatever they want.
And my wife in all this? Does Lulu have enough credit in the eyes of the government? Shindai does an analysis.
We see here that you can do lots of things. With your current mark, you could stay in these hotels without having to pay a deposit. You can get reductions on travel, and this is very interesting. Visas for Canada, Argentina, and Latvia. It doesn't mean a good mark will get you a visa all by itself. Of course it won't. But it can be helpful and will be recognized by some embassies.
Thanks to the good mark displayed on her app.
She has a good score?
She does. She does.
Did you know all that?
No, there are things I didn't know.
Not as scary as we thought.
It's not scary at all.
This is China's social credit system, where Tocqueville's 200-year-old warning has become a living, breathing reality. A place where the government doesn't need to enforce compliance, because citizens are competing for points like a loyalty program. And surveillance isn't imposed, it's convenient for the citizens. When Lulu rides the subway, her QR code is scanned. When she buys groceries, facial recognition processes her payment. When she books a hotel in Shanghai, the app doesn't just check her bank account, it checks her entire digitized life to make sure that she is a behaving citizen. Her purchasing habits, her online activity, her behavior, all of it is cross-referenced by algorithms that decide whether she's been a good citizen. One AI researcher proudly explains that they can tell what kind of people walk down a particular street at a particular time. But what makes this all truly Tocquevillian is that this didn't happen overnight through some dramatic government takeover that the citizens tried to fight against. Instead, it evolved gradually, each piece sold as an important movement to people's life. First, it was just digital payments to make shopping easier, then QR codes during COVID to track the virus, and then social credit scores to reduce fraud in the market. Each step on its own made sense, and it was voluntary and convenient. And now, Lulu lives in a world where she scans her face to buy water from a vending machine and thinks it's funny. So let's talk about Tocquevillian, because he saw this coming with eerie precision. In 1840, he published the second volume of Democracy in America, and towards the end, there's a chapter that reads almost like science fiction. He's trying to describe something that doesn't quite exist yet, and struggling to find the words for a danger that no one has experienced. He writes, "I am trying myself to choose an expression which will accurately convey the whole of the idea I have formed of it, but in vain. The old words despotism and tyranny are inappropriate. The thing in itself is new." And what he envisioned was this: a democratic society that maintains all outward forms of freedom while creating a new kind of control, not through violence or oppression, but through what he called an immense and tutelary power that takes care of everything for its citizens, keeping them in perpetual childhood. And here is a key passage. The will of man is not shattered, but softened, bent, and guided. Men are seldom forced by it to act, but they are constantly restrained from acting. Such a power does not destroy, but it prevents existence. It does not tyrannize, but it compresses, enervates, extinguishes, and stupefies a people, till each nation is reduced to nothing better than a flock of timid and industrious animals, of which the government is the shepherd. That is Lulu's worrying about her points before deciding what to eat for lunch. That's millions of people self-regulating their behavior, not because police are forcing them, but because algorithms are watching and scoring. Tocquevillian predicted that this power would work through a network of small, complicated, minute, and uniform rules, which the most original minds and most energetic characters cannot penetrate. Not grand decrees, but constant, tiny regulations. In modern Beijing, that network is literal. Hundreds of millions of cameras connected to AI, every digital interaction logged and cross-referenced, and every face scanned and cataloged. He even nailed the psychology behind it. Tocquevillian observed that democratic peoples have two conflicting passions: a need for guidance and a desire to be free. That tension is resolved when people convince themselves that they are choosing the system, that they are consenting participants rather than subjects of control. "At least we choose our own schoolmasters," Tocquevillian imagined them saying, even as they surrendered the ability to manage their own affairs. Let's listen to Lulu again.
Do you like living with that, or would you like to refuse?
Why would I refuse? Anyway, you can't.
So what if you could?
I wouldn't. It's so practical, it makes life much easier.
That is not a woman who feels like she is living under overt oppression. That's simply someone who has internalized the logic of the system so completely that resistance seems pointless and even undesirable. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. That's China. That is an authoritarian government with no checks on its power. That literally couldn't happen here. And in some ways, you're right. What's happening in China is an extreme version, the nightmare scenario taken to its logical conclusion. But Tocquevillian's warning wasn't about an authoritarian state. It was about democracies, about free societies that would voluntarily construct their own soft despotism. And the mechanism wouldn't be government at all. And that's where surveillance capitalism comes into play. Harvard professor Shoshana Zuboff coined this term to describe a new economic model that treats human experience as free, raw material. Companies like Google and Facebook don't sell you products. They sell you to advertisers. And more specifically, they sell predictions about your future behavior based on the vast amounts of data they collect about your past and your present behavior. And here is how Zuboff describes it. Surveillance capitalism claims private human experience, translates it into behavioral data, and then feeds that data into machine intelligence systems that produce prediction products sold to businesses who have a commercial interest in knowing what you'll do now, soon, and later. But that's not the end of it, because eventually prediction isn't enough. The companies discovered that the most valuable data comes not just knowing what you'll do, but from shaping what you'll do. He calls this shift from monitoring to actuating, using subtle and subliminal cues, rewards, and punishments to nudge you towards profitable outcomes. It is the same mechanism as China's social credit system, but with a different master. Instead of the government deciding what behaviors to encourage, it's corporations optimizing for engagement and purchases. Instead of losing social credit points, you lose your autonomy, one tiny choice at a time. And we all consent to it. Every time you click accept all cookies, every time you agree to an app's terms of service without reading them, and every time you use a free service that makes its money from your data, you're participating in this system. And there are hundreds of examples of this. The weather app that you use every morning, according to research, it's connected to your device's IDs, IP addresses, location data, and tracks what ads that you click on. It's not free because you're paying with your information, which gets sold to data brokers that you've never heard of. Health and fitness apps like MyFitnessPal collect detailed data about your habits and location, and then sell it to eager advertisers to target health-conscious consumers. In 2007, the year after Facebook introduced targeted ads, their revenue was $153 million. Today, it's over $150 billion, a 1,000-fold increase built entirely on monetizing your behavior. Your smart home devices are not making your life convenient. They're creating what one researcher calls promiscuous technology that tends to overshare because business stands to gain from all of the metadata about people's habits. When you unlock your phone with Face ID or pay with a fingerprint, you are handing over biometric data that, unlike a password, can never be changed if it's compromised. And this is the really Tocquevillian part. The entire system is designed to make refusal nearly impossible. These are called dark patterns, and they're everywhere. The accept all button is a big and colorful, while reject all is buried behind 3 menus. Privacy settings are deliberately complicated and confusing, and pre-checked boxes assume your consent. Emotional language manipulates you. Yes, enhance my experience, versus don't elevate my experience. A 2022 European Commission study found that 97% of the most popular websites and apps used at least one dark pattern. We're not choosing to give up our privacy necessarily. But we are being herded toward that choice through carefully designed psychological manipulation. Because companies are architecting consent in ways that make it almost impossible to say no. So, what did Tocquevillian get right? Well, pretty much everything about the psychology. He understood that soft despotism would not need to force people, because people would trade their freedom for convenience. He got that it would work through small incremental changes rather than dramatic shifts, what he called minute and uniform rules, rather than grand decrees. He predicted that it would maintain the appearance of choice while hollowing out actual autonomy. And most importantly, he understood that the danger was not that people would be dragged into the system against their will, because that would create problems in and of itself. The danger was that they would walk into it voluntarily, even enthusiastically, because each individual piece would seem beneficial. Lulu does not hate the social credit system. She finds it practical. And we don't hate targeted advertising. We appreciate the recommendations that feel personalized. Tocquevillian nailed the outcome as well, that societies would become automized, with individuals focused on their own petty and paltry pleasures, disconnected from each other and from any sense of collective power. Everyone isolated in their own digital bubble, interacting primarily through screens managed by algorithms. But Tocquevillian did get some things wrong, or at least incomplete. First, he focused on government power, but surveillance capitalism is primarily corporate. The threat isn't Big Brother. It's what Zuboff calls Big Other, a distributed network of private companies extracting and commodifying human experience for profit. In the West, it's not the state watching you through your phone. It's Google, Facebook, Amazon, and hundreds of data brokers that you've probably never heard of. In China, we might see what Zuboff calls the fusion scenario, when authoritarian state power merges with corporate surveillance capabilities. The Chinese government doesn't necessarily run the surveillance system directly, but it mandates that Alibaba, Tencent, and other tech giants collect the data and make it available to the government. And this is the nightmare version where corporate and state power combine. Second, Tocquevillian could not have imagined this scale. He pictured an overbearing but human government. He could not envision 1 billion surveillance cameras, facial recognition that AI can pick you out of a crowd in real time, or algorithms that process billions of data points per second to predict and modify your behavior. And third, and most importantly, Tocquevillian assumed that people would at least recognize what was happening to them, even if they felt powerless to resist. But modern surveillance capitalism is specifically designed to be invisible. You don't feel the data being extracted. You don't see the algorithmic manipulation. You experience it as helpful recommendations, convenient services, and personalized experiences. So, where do we draw the line between convenience and control? Because make no mistake, we are making this choice right now, every day, mostly without thinking about it. The key insight is that we can't just use these tools more carefully, because the entire system is designed to make careful use impossible. But we can choose how much we use these technologies, and we can be much more careful about giving our personal data away willy-nilly. And we need to ask bigger questions. Should biometric data even exist in corporate databases at all? Should behavioral prediction markets be legal? And should dark patterns that manipulate consent be treated as fraud? And the answer to these questions lies in what the citizens want. Is your Face ID more important than your privacy? These are questions that we all have to ask ourselves. And the way that society answers those questions will determine the future of surveillance capitalism. So, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all next time.